flaunting wave she spread, and stooping low her breast of snow, she buried her lee-cat head. What blooms upon the starboard bow, what hangs upon the breeze? 'Tis time the packet walls her wings and breast the old salties.
This immersive living history performance is presented by History at Play. Founded by Judith Kalaora in 2010, History at Play chronicles the lives of influential and often forgotten women. Judith is a professional actress, writer, living historian, and educator. She holds a Bachelor of Fine Arts from Syracuse University and graduated from the Globe Education Program at Shakespeare's Globe Theatre of London. After the program, you will have the opportunity to ask questions, first of Deborah Sampson and later of the performer. For more information on where to see History at Play portray other influential women, you can also find them on social media using the handle History at Play and can visit historyatplay.com. And now, we invite you to enjoy A Revolution of Our Own.
Captain Webb, informing us that we are to set up camp. I hoisted my knapsack from my back, and as I placed it upon the ground, a hush fell over the regiment. We were not alone. I stared straight ahead into the dark. Yet all I could see was mist and fog. I looked to my left, and my fellow soldiers, they were staring straight ahead into the dark, into the night. I looked to my right, and my fellow soldiers were staring at me. Don't look at me. Dear God, don't look at me. Every time they looked at me, I could feel my stomach sink like a brick. Every time they looked at me, I could tell they knew that I was a fraud. They knew I was Deborah Sampson. I grasped my musket, and I held it tightly to my chest. And with every rustle of the wind through the trees, there was an omen of danger. With every snap of the twigs beneath our feet, the enemy was upon us. For me, the enemy was to my left. The enemy was to my right. The enemy was in front and behind. For me, the enemy was me. And it got so quiet. You could hear a rat tiptoe across the field. And then there was a crash, and all around us, the musket balls were flying, and I could hear my fellow soldiers, and their screams were deafening to my ears, and I tried to breathe, but the brimstone from our black powder muskets produced nothing but a hacking cough. I tried to see into the smoke, into the dark, into the night, but I could not, and then before I knew what was coming, a man came running towards me, his hands outstretched in front of him, a bloodshot devil of a man, a loyalist cowboy, unlike any I had ever seen in my life. And before I could raise my musket to greet him, he had grasped me by the throat. And I could feel the air leaving my body.
risked my life to be a soldier. And now I would die before ever knowing true battle. No! I had worked my entire life on the farm. I had grown strong as the boys around me. I would fight like a man. I would not die like a dog in this field. With the last gasp of breath of air into my body, I hoisted the bayonet
into the body of the man before me, and my bayonet fell to the ground with his body still attached. Ask me if I killed, and I shall not lie. It was kill or be killed on the battlefield. I could hear my fellow soldiers, their screams, piercing my ears, and I tried to see, and this time I could not. Yet it was not due to the fog. It was not due to the smoke. This time a wave of red poured down my skull. It burned my eyes, and every time I wiped the wave away, the current returned stronger than before. I tried to step over the body of the man who lay before me. But my leg, it would not hold me. Get up, Deborah. Get up! Get up! I had been shot in my thigh, and once more I could feel the life leaving my body. And I reached my hand toward the heavens, and I could see an angel hovering over me, his strong arms lifting me up and pulling me toward the sky. And as I looked into the angel's face, I could see it was no angel at all. It was Ebenezer Sprout, the son of the tavern owner, the 6'4" giant. Surely if he looked into my eyes, he could see me. He could see Deborah. He could not. All he could see was a soldier, and an injured one at that. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. This is an excerpt from A Revolution of Her Own about my life. I am Deborah Sampson, the first woman to fight and to be honorably discharged in the American military, disguised as Robert Shirtliff. Additionally, I would like to provide my viewers today a little bonus in that I would like to recite a portion of my 2-hour oration. I will not provide the whole 2 hours, fear not, yet it will be a portion of the oration that I delivered as I went on national lecture tour following my service in the military. Some 20-odd years later, I would tell my story to the citizens of this great country. So, ooh, that is very, very bright. Now I can't see anything. There. There. I'm not cut out for this electrical lighting devices. You might remember there is a portion of this speech in the performance that I will gladly share with my viewers information on where they can see that in a moment. Nevertheless, this is a portion of my oration from the National Lecture Tour, which commenced in 1802. Wrought upon by an enthusiasm and a frenzy that could brook no control, I burst the tyrant bonds which held my sex in awe, and clandestinely or by stealth grasped an opportunity which custom and the world seemed to deny as a natural privilege. And whilst poverty, hunger, nakedness, cold, and disease had dwindled the American armies to only a handful, whilst universal terror and dismay ran through our camps, ran through our country, while even Washington himself, at their head, though like a god, stood, as it were, on a pinnacle, teetering over the abyss and destruction. The last prelude to our failing, a wretched prey to the yawning jaws of the monster aiming to devour. I threw off the soft habiliment of my sex, and I assumed those of the warrior, already prepared for battle. Thus, I became an actor in this important drama, with an inflexible resolution to persevere through the last scene, when we might be permitted and acknowledged to enjoy what we had so nobly declared we would possess or lose with our lives: freedom and independence. When the philosopher might resume the research unmolested, the statesman be disembarrassed by the distracting theme of national politics, the divine find less occasion to invoke the indignation of heaven on the usurpers and the cannibals of the inherent rights and even the existence of man. When the son should again be restored to the arms of his disconsolate parent, and the lover to the bosom of her, for whom indeed he is willing to jeopard his life, and for whom alone he wishes to live. I will provide more of that oration at a later point. Now, my friends, I would like to take questions, fielding them first for me, Deborah Sampson, and then thereafter for my alter ego. So, let me know, what questions do you have, and I will answer them accordingly. Pardon me. Spring allergies. So from Michelle Rosen, did my wound cause my identity to be uncovered? The wound that you observed occurring in this particular skirmish was a wound I sustained near Tarrytown, and that wound did not actually lead to my discovery. I did go to a field hospital, a temporary hospital set up for soldiers in the field, and I did receive treatment for a laceration that I received across my scalp and onto my forehead. You might see the actual scar. I think it's somewhere there. I've put on anti-scar cream, so it's not quite as bad as it used to be. However, nevertheless, that I had that laceration sewed up or stitched up by a French surgeon, and then when I realized that the surgeon would likely ask me to remove my trousers once the blood dripping down my pant leg was observed by the physician, I actually grabbed my helmet and my weapon, and I escaped from the field hospital and pulled myself into the woods where I was out of range of anyone being able to see me. I put a cloth in my mouth, a piece of leather in my mouth, and then took my penknife which I always carry with me because it is a very good tool to have. And my penknife is something that I utilize not only as a weapon. This is also how I cut my food, how I carve, how I sharpen certain other weapons that I use, as well as at this point in time being a surgical tool with which I utilized to remove the musket ball from my thigh, which oddly enough, you might be thinking, why would anyone keep a musket ball that they dug out of their thigh? But I say, why wouldn't I keep a musket ball that I dug out of my thigh? Because no matter what, when I am having a bad day, I ask myself, Deborah, are you digging a musket ball out of your thigh? No? Then it's not a bad day. And that pretty much puts things in perspective. The actual injury that led to my discovery, Michelle, was not in fact an injury at all. It was a malignant fever that I caught while I was traveling to Philadelphia, and I fainted from the high temperature of the fever and was brought to hospital and examined by Dr. Barnabas Binney, and he did discover my identity. You'll have to learn more by watching the full program. All right, let's see some other questions that we have. What type of responses did I get when I began sharing my story from H. Jean Harmon? Very good responses. In fact, in my diary, I commonly observe how we have a very handsome audience this evening, as we have a very handsome audience tonight, and the folks are very kind and gracious. And after they saw me, so I do a 2-hour oration by memory. It's been, 215 years, so some of the oration has left my mind at this point in time, which is why I needed the cheat sheet, so to speak. And then I did that in my female attire, my gown. And after that oration was complete, I would walk off stage or walk into a dressing area, if it was a smaller town hall or lecture hall, and I would remove my gown and I would put my full kit. This is a continental kit, a continental uniform. Put on my full kit and came back out with my musket, which was a French-made 1768 musket, which was then from the French and Indian War left over and utilized by the Continental Army. We utilized many French weaponry during that engagement, during combat with the British during our War for Independence, and then did the full manual of arms, which of course is the sequence of movements that we utilize in order to properly load and fire our guns in formation so that there are no issues with friendly fire because everyone is firing at the same time and doing the movements at the same time. In another HAP and chat, I'll do the manual of arms for you. How's that? So let's see. When I started telling my story, the responses were all very good. I will say when I did go to New York, just want to make sure I'm going to make this a little bit higher. When I did go to New York City was not as impressed with my delivery, my oration, as many of the other communities that were in smaller towns, and upstate New York were much more ameliorating, much more hospitable to me as an audience. From John Zenko, was I in any major battles? I was in more so skirmishes. I was involved in combat along the Hudson River Valley, the areas such as Tarrytown, Eastchester, and then all along the Hudson River Valley. We were regularly scouting the land along the Hudson River Valley for loyalists, which were irregular soldiers. They were not always paid or actually enlisted men. They were fighting as refugees, essentially. We were, though I caution myself, calling myself a rebel, we were rebels, and the loyals, meaning loyal to King George III, many of them were concentrated in New York State, what is now New York State, but was then the colony of New York, and they were irregular soldiers. They were not necessarily being paid by the government, although many of Delancey's men, Colonel Delancey, who was sort of the leader of these irregular soldiers, they were found to be so stalwart and so useful for the British forces that some of them did receive payment after their service. Washington sent my regiment along with the 7th and the 2nd at various times during the campaign to the Hudson River Valley, where we were combating these loyalists. Now, I was not involved in major battles, but
Don't tell the Norfolk County District Court that, because I said I was at Yorktown when I petitioned for my pension. All right, so in the last few minutes, let's see if we have any more. I think we might have a couple more here. It always takes a little bit longer for me to see these comments. Let's see. Reloading, refreshing. All right. For some reason, I see 4 comments. It says there are 10. So what I will do is give you a little bit of my alter ego and explain a little bit about what I just said to John Zenko, which is regarding whether she was in any major battles. My name is Judith Kalaora. I am the artistic director of History at Play. Pardon me for not looking in the camera right now. I'm actually just trying to see if these other comments will load. And I create, research, write, produce, and perform one-woman and ensemble programs about influential and often forgotten women. We currently have programs featuring women from the American Revolution all the way up through modern day times, the 1980s, and working on programming for the 1990s. Pardon me, I'm going to turn this down. Aha, here are the other ones. Oh, good evening. Glad I'm back. Thank you, Jeremy, Frank. I'm glad to be back as well. It was a well-needed week off. It wasn't really a week off. It was just sort of the night off. I had other performances that I was doing. Hi, Libby. Hi, Jerry. So, John, just to address from a more modern perspective, this was one of the major things that I had to deal with as a historian, was whether she was at Yorktown or not. So we know that Deborah Sampson attempted to enlist in, it was probably June or so of 1781. She attempts to enlist in Middleborough, Massachusetts, which was where she lived, using the alias Timothy Fair from Carver, Massachusetts. And she was discovered or noticed because when she was signing the enlistment form, or the enlistment sheet, she's left-handed, and obviously by law in the Commonwealth or the colony of Massachusetts, Mass Bay Colony, boys were supposed to be educated. Legally, if you had a son, you had to send your son to school, at least during the non-harvesting months of the year and the non-planting months of the year. So kind of opposite to what we have now, students would more often be in school in the summer when you weren't planting and you weren't harvesting. So she was not educated because, 1, she's a girl, 2, she was an indentured servant, though her aunt did teach her how to read and to write when she was quite young, but her aunt didn't mandate that she write with her right hand. So she had this very peculiar way of writing. Remember, you're writing with liquid ink. So if you think it's bad smudging as a lefty with regular pens, you can only imagine how ridiculous it would be to write with your left hand with actual like India ink. So she would write with her hand in this really awkward position, and then not only that, she had sustained an injury when she was an indentured servant working on the farm of Jeremiah Thomas, where she had crushed one of her fingers, so she couldn't bend her index finger on her left hand. So she had this peculiar way of writing where she would like have her left hand up in an awkward position, and then she would also have her left index finger sort of sticking straight up in the air. And the reason why that was known was because she had very, very admiringly been able to obtain a job as a school teacher in Middleborough, Massachusetts, and she was the only female school teacher, what was known as a school marm. So the fact that she comes in and this man enlists as Timothy Thayer from Carver, Massachusetts, and then holds the quill in a way that everyone is like, isn't that the way the school marm holds the quill? She was actually questioned by the Baptist church where she had become a member. The clergy or the ministers at the church voted her out of the church and demanded that she repay the bounty that she had been given for enlisting in the army. Here's my favorite part. She didn't have the bounty. She had spent it on textile cloth with which she was going to make herself a new gown. So as masculine and as aggressive you want to imagine this woman being, the first thing when she had money the first thing she did was go out and buy clothes. And not just like clothes, but like girls' floral textile cloth to make a dress. So she's this a wonderful juxtaposition of super, super girly girl and like bad, you know what, I don't want to say any squares on HAP and Chat because we're family friendly, but a very, very gritty sort of woman soldier. So it's really phenomenal. Now, the thing that I said is she says she's at Yorktown when she goes to the Norfolk County Court in Dedham, Massachusetts, when she's petitioning for her pension. This is about 1802 or so. She's in court under oath. We have the transcript from the court trial, or the court proceedings, says, I was present at Yorktown. But we don't have any actual existing muster rolls of Robert Shurtleff or Timothy Thayer matching that description at Yorktown in the 4th Regiment. So I, as a historian, am left to ponder, did she lie under oath? And then I realize she lied to get into the military in the first place. So what is stopping her from lying in Norfolk County District Court when it meant she had been in a much larger battle, which means more money for her family, for herself, and had been in the Army successfully a year before we actually know her enlistment was. And the date of her actual enlistment, with which we have a muster roll to prove, is May 23rd, 1782. So 2 days from now. So that's Deborah Sampson Day, celebrated in Massachusetts. Great, so what questions do you have for me? Hi, Vanessa, how are you? Good to see you, girl. Michelle, did she marry? She did, yes, 1785, April 7th, 1785. She marries this gentleman named Benjamin Gannett, who lives in Sharon, Massachusetts. He is the son of the wealthiest man in Sharon. I'm sure that makes her feel like at least she's getting some sort of financial stability with this matrimony. Unfortunately, that's not true. Benjamin Gannett, his father may have been very well-to-do, but his son lacked work ethic. Paul Revere, in a letter that he writes to Congress asking for Deborah Sampson to receive a military pension, says, quote, her husband is a good man, but of small force in business. So he clearly just lacked business ethic or sort of the dedication to have any sort of working schedule, which I can tell you personally, now that we're in this strange COVID world, it is hard to keep a schedule of any sort whatsoever, never mind a solid working schedule when you have a farm. So she does marry, she does birth 3 children, and they do adopt a 4th, an orphan. All right. Let's see. Do I have any more questions? The French musket at Charleville. I believe so, but I am not a munitions expert, Jean, so I don't want to stick my foot in my mouth here. But the folks at the Springfield Armory, what they told me, it was likely a 1768 French musket, could have been Charleville. So even they were hesitant to give me the exact model, but they said between 1765 and 1768 was most likely. She enlists around 1781 unsuccessfully, and then 1782. So they're likely using those weapons by that point. But that's something that I've consulted with the Springfield Armory, which, if you're not aware, the Springfield Armory is the first armory in the United States of America. Springfield, Massachusetts. They have the largest collection of firearms in one place in the entire nation. It is a wonderful resource and a national park site. So the next time you make it to Massachusetts, go to Springfield, check out the Armory. I've had the fortune to perform there twice, and I love it. It's a wonderful venue, a wonderful museum. All right, very good, lovely. Libby, I was going to email you today. I'm sorry, I wasn't able to get to the post office when I said I was going to get to the post office, so your Declaration of Independence is coming, I promise you. And I'm sorry, it was a crazy week, but we do have another winner for tonight's HAP and Chat. Ding! And that winner is, I don't know if he's on here right now. Is Robert Loesch on here? Robert Loesch. If you are on here, Robert Loesch, please do let me know your mailing address. I might have it at somewhere because you did purchase a paper HAP ticket, so we can send you a cool copy of this Yankee Doodle poem printed on laid paper, and of course a History at Play sticker. So I thank you very much for your support. And lovely people, we are going back to Deborah Sampson's story this Friday evening, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. That is, for those folks who are watching in other nations, that is Greenwich Mean Time minus 5 hours. Paper HAP is our members only watch group. You pay $5 to $25 per person by Venmo, PayPal, Eventbrite, or credit card, debit card on the www.historyatplay.com website. Please do submit those payments by no later than 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time this Friday, and make sure you request to join Paper HAP if you're on the History at Play page, which you are right now probably because you're watching this video. Underneath the banner, which is a picture of me as Deborah Sampson, click Visit Group, and once you click Visit Group, it'll bring you to Paper HAP, and then click Request to Join. And then once we receive your $5 to $25 contribution, we will admit you. There's lots of great primary sources and bonus materials that I share with you during the week, so it's not just the video, or it's not just the performance, which you can see live on Friday evening, and then through Sunday evening, we keep the recorded performance available to you. So, how is everyone doing? Because I know this week I had this sort of epiphany where I realized I'm like actually okay. And it took 3 months for me to get there, but I'm really, really happy to say that things are picking up now with Paper HAP, and things are picking up with people understanding that live stream is a way that we can bring these stories into your home. I hope you appreciate the work that we're doing. Stick together, stay strong, stay supporting living history. I just read an article that said the Globe Theatre in London, where I trained and performed, is gonna close if they don't get emergency funding. So I can't tell you how important and special it is to have your support and your understanding that this is how I live. I don't have any other means of supporting myself besides the love and the support that you have given me over these last 3 months. So thank you so very much. And Robert Roche, if you do see this, please do send me a message and let me know. Otherwise, I'll look back through the records and try to get this to you. Everyone have a wonderful, wonderful evening. I thank you all so very much for joining me. I have to teach a class, so I'm going to turn the video off. I know I usually leave you with some post-show music, but I will unfortunately have to cut this video off so that you don't hear me in the other room teaching my students. So I love you all, and I want you to promise me, you will make history. Okay? Take care. Ciao, ciao. Bye-bye. Mm-hmm.